Welcome back. It's your favorite uncle, Uncle Bird, and class is in session. Now this is Uncle Bird's Chaco Grilling School, where I'm gonna get you started on your journey to better barbecue. Now, some of you might be worried that you can't do it. Don't worry about that. Let me ask you a question. Did you walk out your mama? If you didn't walk out your mama, that means you learned how to walk. If you learn how to walk, you learn how to barbecue. Let's get started. Lesson 1, get you a Weber kettle. It's the best grill for beginners, hands down. It's easy to use, and you don't have to use a whole bunch of complicated doodads. You can use it for baking, grilling, and smoking. Now, if you are a gadget person, then the Weber kettle's got you covered. Now, the Weber kettle's got a couple of really outstanding benefits. It has tons of available accessories. It don't take up a whole lot of space, and it's very easy to control the temperature. The Weber kettle's lightweight, so it don't require a whole lot of muscle to move it, and then the grill is really good quality, and it should last you up to 10 years if you keep it clean and covered. Now, one thing you want to do is stay away from them cheap offset smokers. They ain't nothing but frustration machines made out of thin metal with it's almost impossible to control the temperature on them things. So stay away, get your Weber kettle. Lesson 2, let's talk about fuel. You gotta fire this thing up. You basically got 3 choices. You got briquettes, lump charcoal, and natural briquettes. Now, briquettes are the traditional backyard barbecue fuel made with fillers and binders, typically made from coal, sodium nitrate, and shaped carbonized sawdust. They're gonna give you consistent burn time due to their uniform shape. Unfortunately, these can have a chemical taste due to other ingredients that are added. Now, you got a lump charcoal. Now, lump charcoal is made by burning wood in a low oxygen environment. This is gonna give you the best taste outside of an all wood fire. It also burns hot. Now, the downside of that is because of the irregular shapes, don't burn as consistently as a regular briquette. And another thing is, this stuff is fragile. It seems like about a third of the bag turned into black dust in tiny pieces. So you got to be real gentle with it, like a baby. And then we have my #1 recommendation, the natural briquette. Now, this is made from fine pieces of hardwood lump charcoal held together with a starch binder. It's gonna give you the best of both worlds, because you're gonna get the consistency of the briquettes with the flavor of the lump charcoal. Now, there are a couple things you want to avoid when you're cooking barbecue. Gas. That stuff's for farts and fish fries. Ain't gonna provide no flavor at all. WEAK, weak. Then you got pellet grills. These are for the people that want to email the grill and then have them send it a text when the meat is done. And for the love of God, don't you ever use any pre-soaked briquettes. I don't even know why this stuff exists. I mean, the regular briquettes wasn't bad enough. Let's soak it in lighter fluid for a few days and then use it. No, stuff's terrible. Might as well light the grill with maybe a mock tank. Lesson 3, don't use lighter fluid. Use a chimney starter instead. Now, if you do happen to have some lighter fluid on hand, it's the first thing that you need to do with it. All right, now that we got that out the way, look, 2023 where I'm at, I don't know what year it is where you at, but there ain't a single good reason to still be using lighter fluid. One of the best ways to start your charcoal is using the Weber Rapid Fire Charcoal Chimney Starter. Gonna hold enough charcoal to fuel your Weber kettle, and then the cone-shaped bottom grate, and because it's got a cone-shaped bottom grate, it lights super easy with no nasty lighter fluid taste. You can just use some plain newspaper, then you good to go. Now, other non-nasty options include wax cubes, fire starters, or tumbleweed. Look, because I don't care what anybody says, that lighter fluid taste don't ever burn off. And I know it's gonna be one of the comments who say, well, Myron Mixon used lighter fluid. I say to you, I don't know if you've looked in the mirror lately or not, but you ain't Myron Mixon, so don't use it. Don't nobody want that lighter fluid chicken you've been cranking out. Lesson 4, it makes 2-zone cooking super easy. It can provide high heat for searing, and even have a built-in water pan to hold the temperature steady when you want to do some low and slow cooking. I highly recommend getting the slow and sear for your Weber kettle. Now, I don't know how I ever live without it. I love it. And the link will be down in the description. Lesson 5, always use some wood for flavor. And you got a couple options when it comes to wood flavoring. Whatever you do, do not soak the wood in water. It's pointless. Why do you think they make boats out of wood? All you doing when you soak the wood is to make the fire drive off the water before the wood starts smoking. It's your last option. All right, so let's get started. We're gonna go from worst to best. Wood chips. This is what it sounds like, chip wood. Now, the best wood is gonna come from deciduous trees. Those are ones that shed their leaves every year. Now, always use the stronger wood chips that you can find, like hickory, oak, mesquite, cherry, pecan, beech, one of them. Now, these can be found in most big box or hardware stores. Now, in my opinion, Fruit woods are real weak unless they green. And what you can do is with your wood chips, you can wrap them up into a foil packet. You poke 2 holes at the top, place them on top of your hot coals and smoke away. The next option is wood chunks. These are chunks of wood. Now, the benefits of the chunks is that they're gonna burn longer and you ain't gotta add them as often. Now, typically, you want them about the size of your fist. These are gonna be the perfect size for the Weber kettle. Just add a few chunks on top of your hot coals and you're good to go. And whenever you want to get a lot more smoke out of them, you can take a couple of chunks, put them together, and wrap them in foil, kind of like a log. Poke 2 holes on the top and place it on top of the hot wood. Now, chunks can also be used to provide smoke and flavor as well as heat. Now, you're gonna be able to find these at most big box stores, but there's a couple places to find them that's a little bit better. I like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. Typically, you can buy a stack of hardwood splits, or you can even find some free or really cheap and use a handsaw to break them down into chunks. But the absolute cheapest source is trees in your neighborhood. Just find a hardwood tree and cut a branch off. Don't worry, green wood is fine, since you're gonna be using charcoal for your heat source. And this is my recommended flavoring agent to get started with. You always got to have some wood. And then you have the pinnacle, split wood, the absolute pinnacle of flavor. But it ain't beginner friendly unless you cut it down into chunks. And you can't really burn split wood in the Weber kettle. It's best used for banking your coals and adding additional flavor from the burning wood. Lesson 6, use the vent to control your temperature. There's 2 ways you're gonna control your temperature. As they say in Mississippi, fuel and air. On the Weber kettle, you control your temperature by using the dampers. There's a damper on the bottom and a damper on the top. Always leave the bottom damper wide open and control your temperature using the top damper. Now, there's an easy guide to temperature. It's pretty much as follows. If you want some high heat, which is going to be between 450 and 550, you want to run it fully open. Medium heat, about 350 to 450, about half open. Then you want low heat, 250 to 350. It's going to be about a quarter open. And if you want to do like a low and slow smoke, which is going to run about 225 to 275, you want to have that about a quarter to 1/8 open. So these ain't exact measurements, but you get the drift. Now, if you want to turn it off, you just got to make it fully closed. You know, just close everything down. Lesson 7, always clean your grate. You want to make sure that it get hot so that it's easier to clean. Now don't wait till next time you cook to clean your grill, because it's easy to clean it when it's hot. Otherwise, you're gonna need to get the grill hot again and clean it. So if you use a little oil or you wait until your grill grates is hot, your food ain't gonna stick. Now, you gotta be, and there's another thing, you gotta be careful with them cheap grill brushes, because they leave those little pieces of metal behind, and ain't nothing to ruin the barbecue like a piercing intestine. Now, you can also clean your grill with a ball of aluminum foil and even some newspaper. You just get the grill hot and ball that stuff up and just rub the grill down. Get it clean enough, get it going. And now, just a little pro tip when it comes to the grill. You want to make sure that you put the grill grates in the right direction. So the grill grates need to be perpendicular to you, so it makes flipping the meat a lot easier. So just remember that. They need to be perpendicular. You need to scoop from that way. Lesson 8, look, people like meat to have flavor. So make liberal use of brines, marinades, and rubs. Now, with any of the following techniques, you must use a non-reactive container and keep it refrigerated during the entire process. Now, non-reactive containers are gonna include food-grade plastics, stainless steel, and glass. Now, unacceptable for brining are gonna be aluminum and copper. Ask me how I know. The metal can leach into the brine and affect the flavor of the meat. When it comes to brines, you basically got 2 types. You got wet brines. That's basically soaking the meat in a salt water solution to tenderize and flavor the meat. It also provides insurance against overcooking. Now, wet brines work best on poultry and pork. They're gonna provide the best consistency because you're simply measuring salt and water. Now, wet brines are slightly to dilute the flavor of the meat, because you gotta remember, the only thing small enough to penetrate the cell wall is salt. So don't waste your money on sugar and other spices, since they only work on the surface of the meat. It's better to add these ingredients in a salt-free rub after you finish brining. Otherwise, you just pouring that stuff down the sink. And your second option of brines is your dry brines. Simply put, it involves salting and then resting the food before cooking it. Dry brine uses the food's own moisture to form the brine that soaks back in. Now, besides producing juicy, flavorful results, dry brining will also help us achieve better browning and a crispy skin. So, when you dry brine, you sprinkle about a half a teaspoon of kosher salt per pound of trimmed meat. So the time can vary between 2 to 72 hours. You have to experiment on your own. Sprinkle the salt on the meat from about 4 to 8 inches away. That way you get a good even distribution. Rubs. Now rubs are aromatic and savory spice and herb mixes that supply the meats to flavor them. Most of them gonna contain salt, which help pull the flavors into the meat a little bit. So you need them on well in advance. Now, the salt gonna penetrate deep, the other stuff's not gonna really penetrate more than a fraction of an inch. Then you got marinades. A marinade is a mixture of oil with an acidic ingredient along with spices, herbs, and various other flavoring agents. It don't penetrate deep into the food, rather it infuses the surface with the flavor of its ingredients. Now, marinades are a great way to infuse flavor into the meat, but you gotta be careful not to leave the meat in there too long, or the acid in the marinade will start to break down the protein and you end up with mushy meat. Now, a basic marinade formula to use is 3 parts fat to 1 part acid. Now, all the other ingredients is to your taste. Lesson 9, get a Jaccard. Now, as a master butcher, Andre Jaccard understood that tougher cuts of meat owed a less than ideal texture to a high concentration of connective fibers in the muscle. He also understood that these cuts can be made more palatable by cutting some of these fibers prior to cooking them. A Jaccard tenderizer uses several rows of thin, penetrating blades honed to a razor-sharp edge on 2 sides that cooks can press into any number of cuts from steaks to chicken cutlets and even venison and other game to create a series of small channels that break up the tough tissue to create a more tender texture. Now, the Jaccard tenderizer has earned an NSF certification for the ease which is kept clean. Now it has a guard that's designed to protect your fingers that travels up to the handle along with some actuating columns. Then the tool is pressed into the meat to reveal the piercing blades. But the tool got other advantages as well. One, it's faster cooking, because the channels created by Jaccard allow heat to penetrate quickly to the center of the meat from both sides, meaning it cooks in as little as 60% of the time that it would normally take otherwise. You get better flavor. The channels also allow your marinades, spices, and rubs to penetrate more deeply into the meat. Another benefit, more even cooking. The third benefit of those pierced channels is that they can help cuts that vary in thickness throughout cook more evenly. This basically solved the problem of having thick cuts that had a fat end and then a little end, and then they're gonna be overcooked near the edges and then undercooked in the, you get juicier meat. Jaccard also helps the meat retain more of its natural moisture because they don't contract as much as meat with more fibers intact. It prevents those valuable juices from being squeezed out. Now, any meat you Jaccard must be cooked to 165 degrees for food safety purposes because the Jaccard will push any surface bacteria into the center of the meat. And then you gotta be careful not to over Jaccard your meat, otherwise the texture will change too much and it'll be like alien meat. You don't want that. Ugh. So be careful. Lesson 10, you're gonna need some prep tools. And I find the following tools invaluable for prepping everything from the meat to the sides. One, you're gonna need a cutting board. I prefer a polypropylene cutting board because they easily disinfected and can be placed in the dishwasher for convenience. Now the set I use got 3 different sizes, so you got extra large, large, and small. Here's a pro tip. You always place a moist paper towel under your cutting board to prevent it from sliding around the countertop. Hey, yeah, you're welcome. Boning knives. Now, these are knives that are designed for precisely removing meat from bone, cutting through connective tissue or ligaments, and also separate meat from fat or joints. Now, the blade can be slightly flexible or stiff, allowing you to maneuver into the small spaces such as between the bones, but it's thicker and sturdier than a fillet knife. Now, I use a Dexter Russell boning knife. Item down in the description. You're gonna need a chef's knife. This is probably the most versatile knife in the kitchen. The chef's knife is designed to perform various tasks such as chopping and mincing vegetables, fruits, and herbs, to cutting through large slabs of meat and disjointing bones. I use a 10-inch Dexter Russell Chef knife. That's my preferred one. I also have an 8-inch. You need poultry shears. They designed to cut through the skin and bone of chickens and other poultry and make it real easy work of cutting up a whole chicken into pieces, sectioning wings, and spatchcocking turkeys and chickens. 2-gallon food safe bucket. This is a perfect way to brine a few chickens, turkey breast, ribs, poultry, etc. It's gonna fit in most refrigerators, and it's typically about 10 inches in diameter and 9.25 inches in height. When you need to brine something bigger, like a whole turkey, you can use a 5-gallon food safe bucket. And if you ain't got room in the fridge, just use a cooler, like a 5-gallon drink cooler. Now, I don't like really touching the meat, so I really like nitrile gloves. They help keep the food in your hands clean. Now, honestly, I hate touching raw meat without gloves. Cut. Jaccard Tenderizer. You need to get one of them. You're gonna need to get a quality set of injectors. I like to get injectors that come with at least 2 needles. One that can be used with thin liquids and one with a wide opening for thicker liquids or for those spices or herbs mixed in. Now, I like to use the smaller needle to inject citrus flavors inside the meat after brining. Measuring cups. You're gonna need these to measure your brines, your marinades, and even your rubs. Knife sharpener. You got to have one of them, because a sharp knife is a safe knife. Now, I ain't one of them guys who can turn any piece of metal into a razor blade with a whetstone, so I use an electric knife sharpener. I use a Chef's Choice Trizor XV knife sharpener. It's got guides that make it super easy to sharpen. Now, most knives just gonna require you to pull it through a couple times and you good to go. Lesson 11, you gotta have your essential accessories for your grill. Well, you're gonna need a spray bottle. You need this to spray your meat with distilled white vinegar, lemon juice, etc. Now, this is for liquids only, because if you try to put garlic powder in there, it's gonna clog up. Remember, this is not for spraying the coals to control the fire. All that does is just get a bunch of ashes on the meat. And if you see somebody doing it, rest assured, they don't know what they're doing at all. I recommend silicone basting brush or mops. Silicone brushes are good for applying sauces at the end of your cook or for basting the meat with spiced oils. And silicone makes it easy to clean up. You can just pop it in the dishwasher. But you also can use a mop, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a little mop that's used to baste the meat, typically when you're cooking a large quantity of meat or you're using a mop sauce. High heat gloves. Sometimes it's just easy to grab the meat instead of fooling around with tongs, especially when grilling bigger meats like turkeys or pork shoulders. These can also be used to move around wings, burgers, etc. Get you some tongs. Now I can't believe I got to say this, but don't get no plastic tongs. Make sure you get some of the longer stainless steel tongs so you ain't got to burn all the hair off your forearm. Make sure they got a scalloped edge because it grips the meat well and it don't tear up the meat. Whatever you do, do not use these. They're terrible. What they remind you of? Yeah, you don't want him turning your meat. So I prefer the long tongs with silicone sides so it don't burn my hands. Look for a set that has a lock so that you can hang them on the grill. I recommend the OXO Good Grip 16 tongs. They're really long and they got silicone on them. Spatula, you're gonna need a spatula. Get a metal spatula. Now, they're great for flipping burgers or fish fillets. You wanna make sure that you get one that's the same size as the stuff that you're gonna be flipping. Now, another little neat tool is the Jaccard Pig-Tail flipper. This is a beautiful little piece of engineering. It's made from surgical grade stainless steel, and it's real easy to lift, rotate, and flip, carry, and you serve food without tongs, forks, spatula, barbecue mitts, or other cooking tools. So it prevents damage to the meat because the only hole that it leaves is a little tiny little pinprick, and because you're not required to squeeze down on it like when you're using tongs, it helps with wrist fatigue. So it's really good if you suffer from carpal tunnel. Veggie and fish baskets. Now, instead of using a 4-pack, you can use the basket for cooking small items like veggies without turning each piece or worrying about them falling through the grill grates. And also, fish baskets are a great tool to use if you like grilled fish, then the fish basket is for you. A fish basket is typically made of 2 mesh-like metal sides held together by some sort of locking mechanism like a clamshell. This helps cook the fish evenly and keeps it from falling apart or sticking to the grill. Lesson 12. Man, use a meat thermometer. People ask me all the time how long it takes to cook different meats. How long do it take to smoke a 4-pound chicken? How long do I smoke the ribs? I don't know. Food done by temperature, not time. Time is just used as a loose approximation of the desired temperature. Now, the thermometer is the most important grilling tool after the grill itself. Thermometers will allow you to consistently cook great meat, and there's several options when it comes to barbecue thermometers. You got a dial oven-safe thermometer, which is a form of bimetal thermometer. I refer to these as a Hernando de Soto 1539 edition, because this is old tech and it's probably the same one he had when he bought them first 13 pigs to America. Anyway, these are leave-in thermometers, which means you leave these in the meat and read the numbers on the dial for the temperature. Take about 1 to 2 minutes for an accurate reading. These need to be placed 2 to 2.5 inches in the thickest part of the meat. So these ain't real good for thin meats or people that's in a rush. Then you got dial instant read thermometers. These are also bimetal thermometers. With this one, I guess it depends on your definition of instant. Now these take about 15 to 20 seconds to get an accurate reading. They also need to be placed about 2.5 inches deep in the thickest part of the meat. This type of thermometer is not designed to be left in the meat while cooking. And it's not good with thin foods. You can use it to check the internal temperature of the meat when you're done cooking. If you leave it in the meat, it's gonna melt. You have been warned. digital instant read thermometer. I like this one. Using one of these bad boys, you can get a temperature reading in 2 to 5 seconds. They only need to be placed about 1/4 to 1/2 inch into your meat for you to get an accurate reading. But you can get deeper temperature readings as well. Now, this ain't designed to be remaining in the meat when you're cooking. This is used at the end of the cook to check the internal temperature of your meat when you're done cooking. This is the one I use the most because I can use it with other dishes as well, like casseroles and soups. Then you got your dial oven thermometers. These are left in your grill or oven to verify what temperature it is. The bimetal thermometers are good for temperatures between 100 to 600 degrees. Then you got digital oven thermometers. Now we getting fancy. You should leave these in your food and get an accurate readout of the temperature on the base unit. Some units are going to offer multiple temperature probes so that you can monitor the temperature of your meat and the grill in one unit. They come in wireless configurations with apps to monitor and record your cooking data as well, like the meat stick. These can be used in the oven or a grill. Lesson 13, we got to deal with the weather. Now, barbecue is an outdoor sport and you got to deal with the elements. The following scenarios are going to be the most common that you're going to face in barbecue. Rain. Can't control the rain, but you got some options to still make it happen. You basically need to cover the grill. So in most cases, you can use a pop-up tent, a big patio umbrella, covered patio, or barbecue on it. The key is to have some cover to protect the fire from the rain. Not too difficult to overcome. Also, you don't want to be on grass. You need to be on a hard surface. So you want to walk on a surface that don't turn into mud. That's a big plus. High wind. High wind is the enemy of good barbecue. It destroys pop-up tents and patio umbrellas. High winds make it incredibly difficult to control the temperature because of the increased airflow. Now, the charcoal's gonna get incredibly hot, and trying to bring down the temperature by closing off the fence, it just make everything taste nasty. You gotta find a way to block the wind by either moving the grill to a protected side of the house or building, or you can build a wall using coolers or other large objects to block the wind. Then you got high winds and rain. Now, these are the most absolute miserable conditions to cook in. With high wind and rain, you got to be able to block the wind and the driving rain. Just order a pizza from Chinese food unless you just like being frustrated. Snow. Similar dealing with the rain, but it can be even more manageable depending on the amount of snow falling. Now, if the snow fall light, your grill's just going to use a little bit more fuel due to the cold, but you normally would not need a tent. Now, I live in the South, so we don't get a lot of the white stuff often, but when we do, we still smoke it. You need to dress warmly and have shoes with a good grip so you ain't out there falling all over the place. When it's cold, the grill gonna take long to come to temperature in the cold and the food gonna take long to cook. So just get ready. Heat. The number one thing you need to remember when grilling in hot weather, it ain't got nothing to do with the grill, but it's about you. You got to stay hydrated, fam, because the biggest issue you face in the summer is dehydration. I always want to have some cold water handy and keep your adult beverages to a minimum. Man, at least till you finish cooking. Now, try to find you some shade or invest in a pop-up tent to provide your own shade. Now, since the ambient temperature is high, you're gonna use less fuel and the food gonna cook quicker, so you need to be on the lookout for that. Lesson 14, keep some heavy-duty foil and butcher paper on hand. Now, foil's got several useful applications on the grill. It's great as a makeshift smoker packet. You can also use it for keeping vegetables and fish and other small foods from falling through the grate. You can even use it to clean the grill by getting the grill hot and scrubbing it with a ball of foil. But don't ever use the foil to cover the grate to the grill. This is like an outdated method that restricts the airflow. And basically what it does is give you a lot of practice removing tiny bits of foil from the meat. Typically, foil is also used to wrap meats to finish up and get past the stall, like with pork shoulders and brisket. Just make sure that you're using the heavy duty foil. Now, one downside to using foil is that as the wrap, it tends to make the bark soft and it don't allow the meat to continue absorbing smoke. So you gotta make sure that your bark is set before you wrap it so it don't remove the bark. Now currently, I'm using unwaxed butcher paper. Now, again, unwaxed. You gotta use unwaxed butcher paper to prevent being exposed to chemicals that's used in the wax butcher paper because they're not designed for cooking. Now, butcher paper is my favorite mainly because it's cheaper than foil. Foil averages about 16 cents a foot, and the butcher paper is about 11 cents per foot. Now, butcher paper don't tear as easily since it's so thick, and I prefer the additional smokiness that you get from the butcher paper because the butcher paper still allows the meat to absorb smoke while it's cooking. Now, the butcher paper can make it a little bit harder to wrap smaller meats like chicken, but it still works. and the butcher paper can be ordered online from Amazon, just like you use foil. They both work. Lesson 15, the meat's supposed to taste good enough to eat without the sauce. A condiment is a substance such as salt, pepper, or barbecue sauce that you add to food when you eat it in order to improve the flavor. Now, barbecue sauce can be a wonderful addition to a piece of smoked meat, but it is not and should not ever be the main attraction. Your focus needs to be on proper seasoning and fire management technique. The point is the entire cooking process, not the end. But here's a few tips that comes to using barbecue sauce. 1, do not use it as a marinade or add it at the beginning of your cook. If you marinate your meats in barbecue sauce, you run the risk of leaving too much of the sauce on or in the cut of meat, which can lead to the sauce's ingredients, such as sugar, burning during the cooking process, which in turn leads to a nasty burnt sugar flavor. Do you like burnt sugar? Yeah, me neither. So use it at the end of the cook or off to the side. 2, stop using too much barbecue sauce. Stop drowning your meat in sauce. Now I got to go bobbing for the meat, like bobbing for apples. Some people use so much damn sauce. 3, you don't have to make it from scratch. Just dress up a store-bought sauce. I've got a great recipe for that. Link down in the description. Lesson 16, clean everything up with bleach. Be nasty. Always add a little bleach to your dishwater so that it disinfects as well as cleans. For a complete disinfecting solution, add 1/3 a cup of bleach to a gallon of dishwater and let it dry on whatever hard surfaces you disinfecting for 6 minutes. This makes a bleach solution of 1,500 parts per million, good enough to disinfect organisms such as MRSA, E. coli, staph, salmonella, SARS, COVID-2 and HIV, rhinovirus and rotavirus. Lesson 17, avoid cross-contamination by prepping all your vegetables first. The easy way to make sure that you don't get anybody sick is to prepare all your veggie dishes that won't be cooked before you start preparing any meats. If it ain't there, it can't make you sick. Now, if you got multiple types of meats to prepare, always prep your poultry last to prevent cross-contamination, especially if you got meats that you're not gonna be cooking to 165 degrees. And there you have it. These are my tips for beginner cooks. Now you know enough to be dangerous. Remember, practice makes perfect, and the more you practice, the better barbecue gonna be. So if you found value in this video, please don't forget to watch the next one.